Hello, and welcome to Why I Love Warhammer, the series where I'll go on a borderline unscripted ramble about why I love something in this hobby. And today, it's World Eaters. The thing that it's worth noting about World Eaters for me personally is that when I got into Warhammer 40,000 for the first time during 4th edition back in like 2006-ish, Khorne was possibly the only chaos demon that I really felt I could understand, because the chaos god of war and blood and skulls for the skull, blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne, milk for the cornflakes. These are things that at 13, 14 years old I could wrap my head around. It made sense to the point where the YouTube account I have for where I do more of my commenting, where I watch a lot more stuff, that account is actually called Demon Prince of Khorne. It made sense at the time, and I just kept going with it. So I've always had a soft spot for Khorne, and the World Eaters I was so happy to have them released as their own faction. Had Death Guard, we had 1,000 Suns. Give Angron and Khorne his turn. Speaking of Angron, I've got the picture of Angron up here on my other monitor, and I love this thing. It took me a little bit to warm up to it because I think when it first got revealed, I just thought it looked a bit too much like a normal Demon Prince, just with some other sword, but with some different weapons and a lot more gold trim. But as time's gone by, I've really grown to like this thing. I love how horrifyingly muscly these wings are. I love the kind of sword and the chain axe. I'm always a sucker for an axe, and the chain weapons in this universe are so insane. I can't not love them. And it doesn't just look like a demon prince. It looks like it looks like Satan. It's got the cables, the butcher's nails in its head. That's what the iron cables have that kind of devil horn aesthetic. The whole face is demonic. Naturally, it's painted red, so that looks satanic as well. But this guy's even got the cloven hooves. That's cool. And even though he's standing on the old tactical rock, but it does make him look a bit bigger and a bit more imposing. Which, considering he's kind of hunched down a little bit, that extra height does help. And I love that tail. It's it's kind of Ankylosaurus like, which is a dinosaur I'm particularly fond of, but also the Chaos Knight Abominant that they released in 9th edition has a similar shaped tail. So I love that continuity it's got between the World Eaters and the Chaos Knights. And the wings themselves are huge and tattered, and the gold armor is something just phenomenal to me. I also like the fact that the armor is a bit paler, and that kind of corroded green can come off as a bit of an off-white. And if you go back to kind of if you were to look up the pre-heresy color scheme for the World Eaters, it is a bit more of a white off-white, which, and I'm a sucker for a pre-heresy scheme. I love that variety in color schemes, and the notion that this Angron here, the leader, the Primarch of the World Eaters, kind of has hints of that pre-heresy color scheme. That's something I find incredibly appealing. Yeah, and then we've got this guy, this guy who's got this kind of boar rhino steed. I'm a sucker for a steed in this game that isn't a horse. I love the look of these guys. I think that they're just really cool looking. I love the robot legs. I love the gold trim. I mean, I know it must be a bit of a pain to paint the gold trim, but I do think it looks really appealing. And the whole pose of the miniature is really intimidating, and I love the weaponry as well. I'll get into weaponry in a little bit. But again, the red and gold really stand out well. I think that's something that will look really, really imposing. And rules wise, the World Eaters seem to have a rule where basically they can do more movement than normal, which for a faction that is basically all melee all the time is so important. But they close that gap, and when this guy's riding a steed, he's going to be moving even faster. And the terror you would feel about having this guy come across the field, like, he's still a space marine. Space marines are like 12 feet tall super soldiers in power armor. So they're not just, so they're 11, 12 feet tall and huge. And then this guy's riding a mount, so it's like doubling. It's like, so we've got, 24 feet tall. Call it 20 feet tall to round down. 20-foot tall dude charging towards you on this giant robot demon rhino. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I don't know how to... That's not a rational thing. That's just an image that this model conjures in my mind of something that I would be terrified of in real life, but would love to play against on the tabletop. It would be phenomenal. The classic Khorne Berzerkers, again, the chain axes. Like, so I know that there is a small subset of my audience who don't know much about the world of Warhammer 40,000. And I feel like if you don't know much about the world of Warhammer 40,000, you look at a chainsword and think, that's a chainsaw. I understand what that is. That is it's like a chainsaw, that's used in gardening and in one particular series of horror movies. I understand how this works. I understand how it's a weapon. The chain axe, however, is one step more ludicrous. I don't know how you'd explain a chain axe to someone who wasn't already invested in this hobby. Because the chain axe is like a suspension of disbelief. You just kind of have to accept that what if a chainsaw, but on an axe? Now, I think they look awesome, but I have no idea how you'd ever pitch that to someone. I have family who watch these videos, right? Shout out to my family here. I don't know what they're going to say upon seeing a chain axe. Is it something you just accept because everything else is so over the top? Is it something that you question? Because if you're questioning the chain axe, I don't know how to explain it. The only closest I can get is chainsaw, but in axe format. I'm going to have to move on before I go crazy thinking about chain axes, because I think they're awesome. I think it's brilliant. I love axes. All my favourite characters and factions tend to, in most other fiction, use axes. It's out of camera shot, but on that wall there, I'll get it down. I own 2 axes. I've got this one and I've got the Gimli axe from The Lord of the Rings. I love fictional characters who use axes. It's fascinating to me. So of course I love the Berzerkers of Khorne with chain axes, because I love axes. I still don't know how you explain them. But before I get even more down the rabbit hole of axes, I like the pistols as well. It shows that they do have that bit of variety. They're not completely useless in every phase of the game. They can still shoot, but they're pistols from the look of it. So they can still be used. So you can still use them as a melee weapon. In case you're wondering, I injured my hand a bit on that axe on the wall, so I'm just rubbing my hand to soothe it better. That's the power of an axe. Even a replica axe from a TV show can still deal some damage even when you're not particularly trying. The other thing I find fascinating with the Khorne Berzerkers, and with some of the other models as well, is the bare arms. So normally, if you look at a regular Space Marine, they're fully clad in power armor. Games Workshop did this video, the armoring of a Space Marine, and you see all these parts getting loaded into the model. They're loaded into the character. and it's, it's big, it's heavy, it's extensive, it covers everything. So the sheer audacity of the Berzerkers of Khorne to leave themselves with bare arms is something I can only admire. I have to admire I admire that audacity to have your bare arms. I mean, bare heads are a different story. I think that's a that's a different debate of whether how good models look when they're not wearing helmets. But then with these guys, you do see those butcher's nails, which lore-wise, unless I'm mistaken, were put into their Primarch, their leader Angron's head to control him, and therefore all of his followers have the same thing done to them. But yeah, the bare arms is something I find incredibly fascinating as a design choice for these models that does make sense, but it adds a level to the character of the World Eaters. The Eightbound and the Exalted Eightbound. Again, same deal, but more so, because all the melee, more shoulder packs, more exposed skin, more they're bigger, they're more demonic looking. This guy here in the middle's got what looks like a salamander's helmet on him, on his backpack. And these guys used to becoming more and more demonic. I do like, in principle, the idea of the number 8 being Khorne's number. I think it's because 8 represents H, and that's hatred. H for hate, and it's so 8 for Khorne. So everything being exalted, 8-bound, and the fact that in lore, if Angron is defeated, the guy from the first slide, he comes back in. It was like 8 days, 8 hours, and 8 minutes, or 8 hours, 8 weeks, and 8 days, or something. So it's all 8s all the time. I think that's an interesting thing to go through. I think it's nice that the different Chaos Gods each have their own number. But yeah, I like the 8-bound and the Exalted 8-bound. I just think they're very interesting models. And again, all melee all the time. It contrasts nicely with the Tau, actually, because I feel like the Tau have all the shooting all the time, and the World Eaters have all of the melee all of the time. Just need an all of the psychic all of the time, and an all of the movement all of the time, and we've got the 4 main phases covered, really. Another guy on another steed. Again, this guy's awesome. I love the black colouring of this one. I also like the chainsword on the horn. I think that's fascinating. The noise must be unbearable, but imagine that thing charging towards you. It would be terrifying in the most awesome way. Again, I'd love to play someone. I'd love to play against someone fielding a World Eaters army, because these things charging down the board would be so fascinating to me. And again, another chain axe. I'll try not to get completely absorbed by chain axes again. Okay, some I can't remember. I think are these jackals or cultists. Either way, I think they're cool. Again, more melee, more of the time. They've got these standards. They're a nice contrast. I think they don't have the same. Obviously, they're not power armored, so they are going to look a bit smaller, but they're still just as melee focused, still just as angry. I love this guy here with the two-handed chainsword. I also like how they've been like attached to them with chains, as if like they are completely physically inseparable from their weapons. I think that's just a really nice touch with them. Khârn the Betrayer. I think this is a really cool sculpt. It's still got the bare muscle on the arm, which skews me out a little bit personally, but it works with the whole aesthetic of him. The headpiece I think is amazing, with those little mouths being horrifying at the bottom corners there. I love the gun, I love the weapon, I love this chain thing he's got coming off. I love the pose. I also love the name. They worship the Chaos God Khorne. This guy's name is Khârn. He is the Betrayer. It fits so perfectly, in my view, into this faction. I can't not love him. Okay, final one. So I basically went as with these. I tried to go through my favorite models in the range. For the World Eaters, I love all the models, so I basically just went through every model that wasn't in the Chaos Space Marines range. The Khorne Lord of Skulls. I think this is brilliant. Look at this walking tank. This is the centaur of tanks. It's huge. It's got massive guns, a big axe. It rolls around. As someone who likes Chaos Knights, I love super heavies, and this super heavy feels super heavy. Just knocking my pop filter there. It's incredible to me. It's huge. Look at all these skulls on. Is it a cow clearer, I guess? Look at them all. And look at this headpiece. I mean, I know there's that one comic where Marnius Calgar, the chapter master of the Ultramarines, does just take this thing down single-handedly. But I'm happy to overlook that, because this is incredible. Look at these engines on its back. It's like... the world of Mad Max would tell this thing to tone it down. This is beautiful to me. This is such a fascinating model. I love its little head. I love the designs. I love the color scheme. I love the tank treads. Everything about this is brilliant to me. And it's so over the top and so metal that I love World Eaters. How can anyone not after seeing this thing? I'm going to call it there. That's the last of the exclusively World Eaters range. I hope that you enjoyed it, and maybe, I mean, obviously, if you don't like World Eaters, that's fair enough. Just because I love them doesn't mean everyone has to. I'm going to say comment question of the day. What army would you most like to play against on the tabletop? For me, I think it's these guys. What's it for you? If you want to do all the YouTube niceties, the like, the comment, the subscribe, notification bell, that'd be great. If you want to share this with any friends, that'd be great too. And I'll see you all next time.